In the heart of a desolate village, where the earth was dry and the crops failed, lived a mother named Eleanor. Her children, two young souls full of innocent hope, were starving. The once lush fields had turned to dust, and the cattle she kept had grown sick, their bellies hollow like the empty space in her heart. Eleanor had always managed to scrape by, making the best of their meager life, but now she faced the unimaginable. Her children, her beloved Emily and Samuel, were on the brink of death, their bodies wasting away from hunger. Eleanor wandered through the empty streets, her once bright eyes now dull and filled with desperation. Every house she passed was abandoned, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The village was dying, and no one came to help. The nearby town had long since stopped sending aid, and the drought had killed any hope that the crops would ever grow again. With trembling hands, Eleanor walked to the edge of the village, where the dense forest began. Her heart pounded in her chest as she knelt beside a small, cracked stream that barely trickled through the once thriving land. She cupped her hands, trying to catch the water, but there was nothing left. "Please, help us," she whispered, her voice breaking. She looked to the heavens, as though begging God for mercy. But deep down, she knew that her prayers had gone unanswered. She had no one else to turn to, and that was when she heard it. A voice, deep and commanding, whispered through the wind, so faint at first that she thought it was her imagination. But it grew louder and clearer. "I can help you." Eleanor spun around, her eyes scanning the forest. There was no one there, but the voice continued, as though it was all around her, coming from the very earth itself. Who is there?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. A shadow appeared before her, long and twisted, stretching across the land. It was the figure of a man, but something was wrong. The shape of his body flickered and shifted like smoke, and his eyes glowed an unsettling shade of red. "I am the one who can grant your wish," the voice boomed, now emerging from the figure before her. "Your children need food. I can provide, but you must make a choice." Eleanor's heart raced as she stared at the shadowy figure. She didn't know who or what it was, but the desperation in her soul overwhelmed her. Her children were suffering. Emily and Samuel were so weak they could barely lift their heads, their lips cracked with thirst. She had to do something. "Anything, please," she whispered again, her voice breaking. "I'll do anything. Just save them." The figure's lips curled into a smile, one that was too wide and unnatural, stretching far beyond what any human face could achieve. His teeth were sharp, like jagged blades, and his breath reeked of rot. "Anything, you say?" he purred. "Very well, I will help you, but there is a price, as there always is." Eleanor nodded frantically. "I don't care. Just help my children." The eye figure stepped closer, his shadow swirling around her. The air grew colder, the scent of decay filling her nostrils. She tried to pull away, but she couldn't move. The darkness wrapped around her, suffocating her in its grip. "You seek to feed your children," the figure continued, his voice almost a purr. "I will give them food, but in return, you must give me something in kind, something precious." Eleanor's mind raced. What could she give? What did he want? But her children, her sweet, innocent children, needed food more than anything. She could give anything. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. The figure's eyes gleamed brighter, and the air seemed to grow darker around her. "I want your soul, Eleanor," he whispered, his words curling like smoke in the night. "In exchange for the food, you will belong to me. Forever." Eleanor froze. Her soul? The thought of giving away her soul, a concept she had always taken for granted, terrified her. But she couldn't let her children starve. She couldn't lose them. "Please," she begged, falling to her knees. I'll do anything. Take it. Take my soul, if it means my children can live." The figure smiled wider, his eyes glowing brighter, a sickening satisfaction evident in his expression. "Very well. Your soul will be mine when the time comes. But until then, your children will be fed." With a snap of his fingers, a gust of cold wind rushed through the air, carrying with it a foul, pungent odor. And then, as though the earth itself had given birth to them, baskets of food appeared before Eleanor, mountains of bread, fruits, vegetables, and meats, enough to feed an entire village for weeks. It was more food than Eleanor had ever seen in her life, and yet the sight of it sent a chill through her veins. Eleanor was torn. Her heart screamed in relief, but there was something wrong, something dark about the food. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach, a gnawing sense of unease. But the thought of her children, starving and fragile, overcame her hesitation. Without thinking, she grabbed a basket and ran back to the village, her heart pounding in her chest. When she arrived home, she found Emily and Samuel lying on their thin mattresses, their faces pale and sunken. They barely stirred when she entered, their eyes half-lidded with fever. Eleanor rushed to them, lifting Emily into her arms and cradling her gently. "Look," she whispered, showing them the food she had brought. "Food. We'll be all right. We'll survive." Emily opened her eyes slightly, her lips cracked and dry. "Mama," she whispered weakly, "I'm so hungry." "Don't worry, my sweet," Eleanor murmured, tears streaming down her face. "You're going to be all right now. We'll have everything we need." She fed them both, spooning the food into their mouths. As they ate, their cheeks flushed with color, and they began to regain strength. Their bodies, once frail and broken, slowly began to heal. For the first time in weeks, Eleanor saw the light of life return to their eyes. But something strange happened as the food went down. Their eyes grew wide with something other than hunger, something far darker. Their smiles stretched unnaturally wide, their teeth now sharp and pointed, their eyes gleaming with a red glow that mirrored the figure in the forest. Eleanor froze, her blood running cold. Something was wrong. "Emily, Samuel," she whispered, her voice shaky. But they didn't respond. Instead, their faces twisted into grotesque masks of hunger, their eyes now completely black, filled with a hunger that could not be satisfied. Suddenly, the door to the small cottage slammed shut behind her. Eleanor spun around, and there, standing in the doorway, was the devilish figure, the one who had made the bargain. His smile was wide and filled with malice as he watched the transformation unfold. "What? What is happening?" Eleanor gasped, her voice trembling with fear. "Your children are mine now, Eleanor," the figure said, his voice dark and smooth. "As are you. Your soul will be claimed when the time comes. But for now, you and your children belong to me." Eleanor's heart sank as she realized the truth. The food had been a trap, a cursed gift, and her children, her precious Emily and Samuel, had been turned into something unrecognizable. They were no longer her children, but puppets of the devil. In a panic, Eleanor ran to them, reaching out to them, calling their names, but they recoiled, their new, twisted forms snarling at her. They were no longer the innocent children she had once known. They were monsters, their bodies contorted and deformed, their minds consumed by the darkness. With a howl of agony, Eleanor fell to her knees, tears flooding her eyes. The devil's laughter filled the air as the walls of the cottage seemed to close in on her. "You made your choice, Eleanor," the devil said, his voice like thunder. "Now, you will live with it. You and your children will serve me forever, feeding the hunger that never ends." The last thing Eleanor saw before her world went dark was the twisted, hungry faces of her children, their once innocent eyes now black as night. And as the devil's grip tightened around her soul, she realized that she had made the worst mistake of her life, and she would never escape it. night deepened as Eleanor sat motionless in the corner of the cottage, her hands trembling in her lap. Her children, now monstrous, roamed the dark corners of the room, their grotesque forms circling her like hungry beasts. Emily and Samuel, her sweet, innocent children, had become something unrecognizable. Their once bright faces were twisted. In hunger, their eyes hollow pits of darkness, glowing red like the fires of hell itself. They were no longer hers, they were the devil's. Eleanor's mind reeled with the horror of it all. She had been so desperate, so willing to sacrifice everything for the life of her children, but now she realized the terrifying truth. There would be no salvation for her, no reprieve. Her children were lost, their souls corrupted, and she was the one who had condemned them. Her eyes shifted to the figure standing in the doorway, the devilish presence who had made the deal. His shape flickered in and out of reality, his form a twisted dance of shadows, ever shifting and flickering like flames. His eyes were the only constant, those fiery, glowing eyes that watched her with cruel amusement. "You look so broken," the figure said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Did you really think you could save them, Eleanor? Did you think a simple bargain could undo the world's cruelty?" Eleanor couldn't speak. Her throat was dry, her heart weighed down by the unbearable sorrow of what she had done. Her children, her precious Emily and Samuel, were no longer children at all. They were lost souls, bound to the darkness. And it was all her fault, but the devil was not finished. He stepped closer, his presence suffocating the room, and with each step, the temperature dropped, the very air thick with malevolent power. His grin widened. "You should be grateful, Eleanor. I gave you what you asked for. Food for your starving children, strength for their feeble bodies," he said, his voice low and slow. "I fulfilled my part of the bargain, and now you will fulfill yours." Eleanor looked up at him, the horror mounting in her chest. "What do you want from me?" His eyes gleamed. "I have already taken your children, but the price of a soul is not a simple thing. You must serve me in other ways. You see, Eleanor, the hunger that now possesses them cannot be satisfied with mere food. They are mine, but they need more. More lives, more souls to consume." Eleanor felt her stomach churn as the full weight of his words sank in. "No. No. Please, I won't let them. I won't let them kill anyone else," she cried, her voice breaking. The devil laughed, a sound so terrible that it made her bones ache. "You have no say in the matter, Eleanor. They are my creations now, and I will use them as I please." He gestured to the monstrous forms of Emily and Samuel, who circled her hungrily, their twisted faces now contorted into grotesque smiles, their lips dripping with some dark substance. They stared at her with an insatiable hunger, their eyes filled with an eerie, otherworldly light. But something stirred in the deepest part of Eleanor's soul, a sliver of defiance. "No, I will not let them become killers. I will not let my children be lost forever. I'll do anything," Eleanor whispered, her voice hoarse but filled with determination. "Anything to save them." The devil tilted his head slightly, as though intrigued. "Anything, you say? How far are you willing to go, Eleanor? How much are you willing to sacrifice?" Her heart pounded in her chest, but she knew there was no other choice. If she was to save her children, even if it meant a cost far greater than she could imagine, she would do it. "What do you want from me?" The devil's smile widened, his eyes gleaming with malevolent satisfaction. "A sacrifice, a final offering, to complete the pact. You will offer me the one thing you still have left, your very life." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. "My life?" "Yes. Your life, Eleanor. Once you die, your soul will be bound to me forever, and your children will return to you. They will be free from the hunger that drives them. They will be restored to the children you once knew, but only if you give yourself up to me entirely. If you refuse, if you even hesitate, they will kill you, and countless others. The curse will spread, and no one will be spared. The air grew colder, and Eleanor could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her like 1,000 stones. Her children, Emily and Samuel, were still circling her, their eyes burning with hunger. But their twisted features seemed to soften just a little as they waited for her answer. They didn't speak, but their hungry gazes pleaded with her. It was almost as though there was still something of them left inside. Eleanor's heart shattered. How could she choose between her life and her children's souls? How could she choose to condemn herself when her children had been stolen by the very thing she had hoped to escape? "I'll do it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'll give you my life. If it means saving them, I'll give you everything." The devil laughed, his voice low and guttural, like a rumble of thunder. "Good, you understand the price. And now, it is time." He stepped forward, reaching into the depths of her chest with invisible clawed hands. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat as the air grew thick with a suffocating force. She felt as though her very soul was being pulled from her body. The warmth, the life drained from her, leaving only emptiness. Pain shot through her like 1,000 knives, and she felt herself slipping away, the world around her fading into nothing. But just as she felt herself slipping into the abyss, her children's voices broke through the darkness. "Mama!" they whispered, their voices soft and sweet, like the voices she had once known. The devil stopped, his hand hovering above her chest, his eyes narrowed in displeasure. "No, no, don't listen to them," he hissed. But the voices of Emily and Samuel grew louder, their pleading tones filling her mind. "Mama, please, don't leave us." Eleanor felt a burst of warmth flood her chest, an aching, powerful warmth that came from somewhere deep within her heart. Her children, they were still in there. There was still hope. She wouldn't let them become monsters. Not completely, with what little strength she had left, she cried out, her voice shaking but strong. "No! I won't let you take them. I won't let you win." The devil roared in fury as Eleanor gathered every ounce of will she had left, reaching into the very core of her soul. She focused all her love, all her memories of her children, her precious, innocent Emily and Samuel, and with one final desperate cry, she pulled them back. She reached through the curse, through the darkness, and she clung to them, holding on to the last remnants of the children she once knew. The devil howled in rage, but Eleanor's will was stronger than he had anticipated. The bond she had formed with her children, the bond of a mother's love, was not so easily shattered. But as the light of her soul began to wane, the figure of the devil became more and more distorted, flickering in and out of existence. He screamed in fury, but it was too late. In that final moment, Eleanor's voice rose higher than the devil's, filled with the strength of a mother's love, and the world erupted in a storm of dark energy and blinding light. The world around Eleanor exploded in a violent storm of darkness and light. It was as though the fabric of reality itself had been torn apart by the force of her final cry. The devil's form writhed and twisted like smoke in the wind, flickering in and out of existence. His furious roar was drowned by the overwhelming surge of light that began to flood the room. Eleanor's body was shaking, her life force nearly extinguished, but there was still one thing left in her: her love for her children. It pulsed through, her veins like fire lighting up the darkness, banishing the presence of the devil. The shadowy figure recoiled, his eyes glowing brighter with rage, his jagged teeth bared. "No!" he snarled, his voice twisted with frustration. "This wasn't the bargain! You were supposed to give up your soul! You were supposed to surrender!" But Eleanor's love was not a simple thing. It was the bond between mother and child. Ancient, pure and unbreakable. No dark power could sever it. She reached deep inside herself, pulling all the strength she had left, focusing on the last vestiges of her children's souls, now buried beneath the curse. "Emily, Samuel," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but it carried the weight of a promise. The devil screamed again, an ear-piercing wail that rattled the very walls. He extended his hand toward her, attempting to reclaim her soul, to rip her apart, but Eleanor was no longer in his control. She felt herself pushing back against him, against the very forces of darkness that had swallowed her children. For a fleeting moment, Eleanor's eyes met the eyes of her children. Emily and Samuel stood in the corner, their bodies still monstrous, their eyes still blackened with the hunger of the curse. But in the depths of their gaze, Eleanor saw something, a glimmer, something familiar, something human. Her children were still there. Her heart broke with hope and agony. "Please, come back to me," she begged softly, reaching out with trembling hands. "I won't let you become this. I'll fight until the end. I'll do anything to save you." And then, a powerful force surged within her. It was as if the bond between them had never been severed. She felt their spirits, their warmth, calling out to her, trying to break free from the prison of darkness that had imprisoned them. The devil, realizing too late what was happening, tried to stop them, his hands reaching out, clawing at the air, but it was too late. With a sudden, blinding flash of light, Eleanor's children began to change. Their twisted, grotesque forms melted away like shadows in the light of dawn. Their skin softened, their eyes regained their once innocent color, and their faces, which had been contorted in hunger, now softened into the faces of the children she remembered. "Eleanor." Emily's voice was weak at first, but clear, free of the demonic distortion. "Mama, we're sorry." Samuel, his voice now soft and filled with emotion, stepped forward, his hand outstretched toward his mother. "We're so sorry, Mama. We didn't want this." Tears poured down Eleanor's face as she collapsed to her knees, the overwhelming relief flooding her heart. Her children were back. They were whole, they were free, but the devil was not finished. "You think you've won?" His voice thundered, a low, mocking growl that shook the very air. "You think this is over?" Eleanor looked up at him, standing with her children now, their hands joined together. The devil's form was changing, becoming darker, more twisted. His once smiling face now a snarling mask of rage. "I gave them life," the devil hissed, "and I can take it away just as easily." The ground beneath their feet trembled, and Eleanor's children stepped back, fear flashing across their faces. The devil's power was far from gone. He had not been defeated, but Eleanor was no longer the broken woman who had made a desperate pact in her grief. Her love for her children had unlocked a power within her, a strength that transcended the darkness itself. She rose to her feet, her voice steady, no longer trembling with fear, but burning with defiance. "No," she said, her voice firm and resolute. "You will not take them again." The devil's form surged forward, his hands reaching out to claim their souls once more. But Eleanor, now glowing with an otherworldly light, held her ground. She felt her children's hands gripping hers, their souls intertwined with her own. Together, they formed a barrier, a shield of light that the devil could not penetrate. The more the devil tried to advance, the brighter the light became, pushing him back with a force he had never known. "You are nothing," Eleanor spat, her voice unwavering. "You are just a shadow, a parasite feeding off fear and pain. But I will not let you take what is mine." The devil roared in frustration, his body writhing and twisting, but the light only grew brighter, the warmth of Eleanor's love creating an unbreakable force. And then, in a final, earth-shattering moment, the Devil let out a scream so powerful that it shook the heavens themselves. The ground cracked open beneath him, and the force of Eleanor's love and defiance pushed him back into the depths of the abyss from which he had come. The dark clouds that had gathered above the village began to dissipate, and the air, once thick with malevolent power, cleared. Eleanor collapsed to her knees, exhausted, her children falling beside her, their faces still weak but now full of life and relief. The curse had been broken. Eleanor held her children close, feeling the warmth of their bodies, the steady rhythm of their breath. She had saved them. She had sacrificed everything. And in the end, her love had triumphed over the darkness. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the sky, casting golden light over the village, Eleanor knew one thing. She had won. But the scars of the past would never truly fade. The devil had been defeated, but the memories of that night would remain with her forever. And as for the village, it began to heal. The land, once dry and barren, slowly started to regain its vitality. Crops began to sprout, the waters flowed more freely, and the air was fresh once again. But Eleanor's battle, her true victory, was the love she had restored, the family she had saved from the darkness. She had stared into the abyss and had chosen to fight with everything she had. And in that fight, she had not only saved her children, but had found strength beyond her understanding.